Humans can't fight. They're basically squishy bags of jelly wrapped in overpriced uniforms. That was the first lesson from Carr, the scaled instructor. With 4 arms and a gravel-like voice. The day Daniel arrived, the academy's arena smelled faintly of ozone and pride, filled with towering cadets from species Daniel couldn't even pronounce. They had claws, plasma glands, armored skins, or wings sharp enough to slice air. Daniel carried a backpack, notebook, and shoes that squeaked with every step. By week 3, his name had become a running joke. He flunked target practice when the plasma rifle's recoil knocked him flat. He failed melee drills. When the weighted staff slipped from his hands, he collapsed in endurance tests after tripping on his own shoelaces. The alien students, his presence became free comedy show. Even the training machines graded him unfit for battle. But Daniel never quit, which only made them laugh harder. Each failure became legend. Once he was hurled so far across the sparring hall that he actually broke the Academy's distance record for involuntary flight. The scoreboard updated instantly, and aliens roared, patting him on the back as he groaned on the floor. "Maybe I'll major in flight," he muttered, sparking another round of laughter. Yet his persistence unsettled the instructors. Humans were the newest species admitted into the academy, and their reputation was unclear. Most saw them as fragile tinkerers, too curious, not durable enough. But Daniel, no matter how often he stumbled, showed up each morning with a crooked smile and a pen tucked behind his ear, like he was taking notes on how badly he'd fail. When midterm evaluations arrived, the council decided to test him once more. "You've failed every assessment," Carr announced before the entire assembly. "Therefore you will face our champion. One bout, one chance before we send you home." The arena lights blazed. Champion Threx, a hulking war beast. Student stomped forward. Twice Daniel's height, armored in bony ridges. Threx's reputation was brutal. Undefeated for 3 years, his victories so decisive that some opponents never rose again. The crowd thundered with approval, expecting the human to be crushed. Daniel stepped into the ring in his same squeaky shoes and loose academy tunic. No weapon, no armor. He looked like he'd wandered into the wrong room. Carr lifted one arm. "Begin." Threx lunged, claws extended for an easy kill. Daniel didn't raise his fist. He shifted slightly, slipped to the side, and tapped one finger against Threx's neck. The champion collapsed instantly, sprawling, unconscious, with a thud that shook the floor. Silence spread like fire across dry grass. Thousands of alien eyes widened. None understood what they'd seen. Daniel brushed his hands, shrugged, and said, "Pressure points. Pretty useful, actually." Whispers erupted. Every species prided itself on raw strength, armor, or devastating weapons. None had thought of anatomy as a battlefield, of turning fragile bodies into maps of hidden switches. While his peers flexed muscles and blasted targets, Daniel had spent long nights in the library, memorizing physiology. He didn't need brute force. He needed timing, precision, and nerve. "Impossible," Carr barked, rushing over. He checked Threx, then stared at Daniel, as though a worm had bitten back. "What did you do?" "Science," Daniel said with a shaky grin. "And maybe a little luck." The council debated furiously. Demanded his expulsion for trickery. Others argued it was proof that humans deserved their place outside. Alien cadets swarmed him with questions, accusations, and stares tinged with something new: respect. Daniel joked his way through though his pulse raced. He knew he'd only shown the surface. Behind the stumbles, bruises, and jokes he'd been building something else. The Academy thought only of strength versus strength, plasma versus shield, scale versus blade. Humanity thought in weaknesses. And Daniel, the worst fighter in class, had just opened a door no alien expected. Word spread beyond the Academy. Instructors whispered of the jelly-like species that toppled a champion without a weapon. Across the stars, generals reconsidered their strategies. Fragile humans had hidden tools no one anticipated. And Daniel, still rubbing a sore shoulder from practice falls, had no clue that his one move was about to change everything. The cafeteria buzzed the next morning louder than a plasma reactor. Everywhere Daniel walked, heads turned, mandibles clicked, wings rustled, whispers followed. Called him a cheater, others called him dangerous, but all agreed on one point. The human who failed at everything had done the impossible. He sat down with a tray of gray nutrient paste and synthetic water, pretending nothing had changed. Even the serving drone paused before rolling away, as if it too wondered how the weakest student had risen overnight. Threx remained in the medical wing, still recovering. Healers scanned him 3 times, searching for broken bones, torn tissues, or poisons. They found nothing, just a nerve impulse disrupted by Daniel's precise strike. That fact unnerved the council even more. They prided themselves on resilience and raw power. A single finger bypassing all of that was like watching a sandcastle tip over a mountain. Daniel was summoned to hearing. He entered a chamber carved from black stone, walls etched with glowing inscriptions pulsing like veins. Around the circular dais sat the counselors, each representing a different species. Some had molten silver eyes, others twitching antennae, and one shifted like liquid metal. They studied him with suspicion and reluctant curiosity. "Explain," demanded Counselor Zeril, a feathered elder with a crest that shimmered with authority. "How did you, a proven failure, topple our finest with one touch?" Daniel swallowed. "I studied. I read anatomy charts. Every species has weak points. Some are easy to reach if you know where to look. Didn't cheat. I just applied what I learned." A rumble shook the chamber. Counselor Thova, a towering insectoid, clacked its mandibles. "Strength wins. Wars, not tricks." Daniel shook his head. "Strength without knowledge is wasted. A giant can still fall if you know where to push." That phrase spread like fire through the academy. A giant can still fall. Days later, the students challenged him, not the council. Cadets, who once laughed, now demanded to test their mettle. First was Serac, a winged warrior who dove from above with talons. Daniel sidestepped and pressed 2 fingers against a tendon in Serac's wing, locking it mid-flight. The cadet crashed harmlessly into a padded wall. Next came Vera, a crystalline student shimmering like cut glass. Daniel had studied her crystalline nodes the night before. When she lunged, he struck a junction where her energy conduits met, making her whole body flicker like a broken lamp. The crowd test. What had been humiliation weeks ago was now awe. He never bragged, never celebrated. He only brushed himself off, muttering about luck. But luck alone couldn't explain the growing list of victories. Each victory was clean, precise, and almost effortless. The instructors could no longer deny his progress, though most acknowledged it reluctantly. Karhu had mocked him from the very first day, paced angrily after every bout, muttering that soft jelly had no business winning. Yet even he had to admit the human was achieving what none of them could predict. Rumors traveled beyond the academy walls. Whispers reached alien generals and strategists, some wondering if humans were hiding their true nature. Few dismissed it as absurd. Surely one human did not represent an entire race. Others grew uneasy. Midway through training, Daniel's comm buzzed with a transmission from Earth Command. He was summoned to a private chamber where a hologram of an older officer flickered. Life. Cadet Daniel, do you realize what you've begun? The officer asked, his voice laced with pride and worry. Daniel rubbed his neck. I just didn't want to get crushed again, sir. The hologram leaned closer. You've given them reason to fear us. That's no small thing. Or maybe closer than they admit. Keep going. Show them humans don't need claws or scales to prevail. Daniel nodded slowly, the weight of it settling on his shoulders. What started as survival in a hostile classroom was turning into something much greater. The Academy soon declared a tournament, open to every species. Its purpose was clear: to restore balance, to prove the humans' wins were only accidents. Daniel entered without armor, without weapons, only his steady hands and sharp eyes. Match after match he faced terrifying rivals, one with flame glands that seared the air, another with a steel-whipped tail, and one with two brains calculating moves mid-battle. Daniel kept winning, not through strength but through adaptation, endless study, and sheer refusal to quit. The crowd that once mocked now roared in support. Cadets began imitating his methods, searching for weak points, turning contests of brute force into battles of ingenuity. The academy was changing. Humanity was changing it. In the shadows, darker whispers stirred. Some saw Daniel not as a pioneer but a threat. If one human could topple their champions, what might an army do? Quiet plans formed, talk of purging this species before it grew too bold. Daniel didn't hear those whispers. He was too busy focusing on the next round, tying his shoelaces and steadying his nerves. But the storm was near, and the grand tournament would decide more than a champion. It would decide whether humans remained students or became enemies. Daniel stood at the arena's center, the crowd's roar rolling like thunder around him, louder than any lecture hall. The final round had arrived, and everyone knew it was no longer about pride or bragging rights. Counselors, instructors, and even distant audiences across the galaxy understood the stakes. The academy had set out to prove the human a fluke, but his victories had made him a symbol. His opponent entered, and the temperature seemed to fall. Counselor, Thaba's chosen champion, bred for war, emerged before the crowd, taller than Threx, encased in armor so dense plasma fire could barely scratch it. This warrior carried the academy's honor on his shoulders. His name was Krogar, and the crowd's roar made Daniel's chest rattle. Krogar's species had long ruled these tournaments, claiming to be the purest expression of muscle and power. This match was framed not as skill versus skill, but as a declaration. Strength would reclaim its throne. Daniel stood still, his loose tunic fluttering as vents released a gust of. He bore no weapon, carried no armor, only memory of long nights in the library and the calm realization that if he failed here, humanity's reputation would fall with him. The bell rang. Krogar charged, each step shaking the floor. The crowd leaned forward, certain the human would be obliterated in one swing. Daniel didn't flinch. He studied Krogar's movements like a familiar page. A fraction of a second before impact he shifted, sliding aside, and struck a cluster hidden beneath the armored boulder. Krogar faltered, surprised but not stopped. Daniel rolled clear of a second strike, his hands searching for the precise points he had memorized from alien physiology. Krogar attacked like an avalanche, blow after blow, each more devastating than the last. Daniel never answered with force. He countered with timing, calculation, and the uniquely human talent for finding cracks in what seemed unbreakable. The fight dragged on, longer than any before. Sweat blurred Daniel's eyes, muscles burning, yet he pressed on. The alien audience grew uneasy. This was no spectacle, it was something changing before their eyes. At last, Daniel saw it, the faintest hesitation in Krogar's stance, a flaw invisible to most. He lunged, pressing a hand against a junction just below the neckplate. Krogar froze. His massive form shuddered, then collapsed with a crash that shook the arena. Silence fell. Instantly, Daniel staggered back, breathing raggedly, his arms shaking. But he remained on his feet. Against all odds, the human who failed every trial had defeated their ultimate champion. Silence broke into an eruption of voices. Not ridicule, not laughter, astonishment that edged into fear. The counselors exchanged glances, some furious, others contemplative, but none could deny it. They had sought to humble the human and instead made him a legend. Daniel raised a hand awkwardly to wave, then let it fall. He wasn't here to gloat. He had proved his point to them and to himself. Humanity needed no claws, no armor, no fire. They had something different: curiosity, adaptability, the determination to fail, to learn, and to try again until even giants toppled. After the match, whispers spread quicker than fleets could fly. Across distant systems, alien war councils gathered to rethink their plans. Some viewed humanity as a threat that must be destroyed, while others saw them as an ally worthy of respect. The Academy, once the place where Daniel endured daily ridicule, became the ground where the galaxy learned a single lesson. Humans were not fragile. They were inventive, cunning, and unyielding. Weeks later, Daniel stood at the Academy gates, gazing at the skyline of alien towers and ships. Students who once mocked him now greeted him with quiet respect. A few even sought him out, asking about pressure points and study routines. Daniel shared what he could, but always warned with a crooked grin. Careful, this knowledge can topple giants. Carr, the instructor who mocked him the most, finally approached. The towering four-armed alien loomed over him, but the scorn was gone. "You have forced us to rewrite our teachings," Carr confessed. "Perhaps your people truly belong here." Daniel gave a faint smile. "We belong anywhere we try. That's simply what humans do." And so, the Academy shifted. Strength was no longer measured by size or brute force alone. Strategy, learning, and adaptability became part of the lessons, reshaping how countless species prepared for war and peace alike. Humanity's seat among the stars was secured, not through raw might, but through a cadet who never surrendered, who studied while others laughed, who proved the smallest hand could topple the strongest fighter. The tale of Daniel, the human cadet who failed every test yet defeated their champion in a single strike, spread across the galaxy as both warning and inspiration. To some, it meant beware. To others, it meant hope. For Daniel, it was simply proof that no matter how impossible things seemed, humans had a way of shocking everyone. And that shock would echo far beyond the Academy's walls. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again.